students. Today we are going to discuss Kabir's principles of syncretism in Hinduism and Islam. This unit would enable the students to understand Kabir's life, his time, his principles of syncretism in Hinduism and Islam, and a blend of Hinduism and Islam as proposed by Kabir. To begin with, as an introduction, we would look into the meaning of syncretism. Within the history of religion and related disciplines, syncretism refers to a combination between religions and cultures. Syncretism has been used to illustrate the influence of one religion on another, the interpenetration or combination of two religious systems, the appropriation of a deity, rituals, symbols, text, or idea, or the amalgamation of different elements into one religion or religious form. The term syncretism is often used without a clear and explicit definition. Roughly speaking, in actual language, the term syncretism is used to denote any mixture of two or more religions. It might also be used to refer to cases when elements from one religion are accepted into another without basically changing the character of the receiving religion. It is because of the broadness of the definition of the term that makes it difficult to understand. Therefore, it is preferable to start with the analysis of the practical facts of encounter of religions to examine the various types, conditions, and results of such encounter. The result of coming together of two religions is obviously different from case to case. It is possible for two organized religions to exist side by side for centuries without any exchange taking place. However, as a matter of fact, few religions are totally pure or homogeneous and free from elements of syncretism or traces of an encounter with another religion. Scholars of Indian history and language believes that the history of Hindi language and literature started roughly from the 10th century AD, when the different Central Asian tribes invaded Indian territories for its riches and with an idea of the expansion of their respective political territories. The period is considered to be the period of turmoil in the history of the Indian subcontinent. The language that born out of such interaction between the different cultures of Central Asia and Indic origin was termed as Hindi. It was a mixture of Sanskrit, Pali, Prakrit, Arabian, and Old Persian languages. Evidently, the advent of Islam in the Indian subcontinent had two different kinds of effect. One was in the form of Sufism which was more submissive and polite in its nature, and the other in the form of an ardent, inflexible religions. This period of cultural clash between people of Indic origin and Central Asian tribes went up to mid-14th century. References have made to events like veiling tradition that became prevalent in Hinduism and rituals of austerities or severities being made in the name of Pir, Khwaja, Chishti, etc., that the Central Asian tribes had started during this time. This period is followed by Bhakti Kal, which is a period of appeal and devotion to power supreme, or period of oblation or sacrifice to the power supreme. Kabir was an Indian mystic whose teaching stressed on two primary themes: the possibility of spiritual union with the Divine One and the utter possibility of harmony between all religious and ideological distinctions. He himself not only conducted himself on the righteous and accepting path of life, but also talked uniquely about the virtues of life which are to be followed by each one in his or her life. He always preached people to be sympathetic towards other living beings and practice true love. Kabir urged the need to have company of good people who adhere to values and principles. Kabir's poetry is a reflection of his philosophy about life. His writings were mainly based on the concept of reincarnation and karma. Although he was drawn deeply into spiritual life, Kabir openly criticized all sects and gave a new distinction to the Indian philosophy. With a straightforward approach on various aspects of human existence, it is important to point out that Kabir did not preach against any particular religion, but he spoke strongly against the hypocrisy committed by people in the name of religion. This cultural mixing gave rise to different worshipping techniques, which includes Sufism from the Central Asian tribes and saint from Hinduism. Saints, on the basis and types of their sacrifice made to the power supreme, are characterized into two parts, that is, one who were worshippers of the formless or shapeless power supreme, and the second being those who worshipped the power supreme in a definite shape or form. The second ones are further categorized into two sects, namely saints pertaining to Krishna, and the second type of poets were those who considered Lord Rama as the ultimate abode of their oblation. We should also keep this in mind, that there were other indigenous tribes like Siddha, Yogis. The Nath tradition were also deep rooted in the Indian psyche. The birth of Kabir is associated with such a period of cultural turmoil of India. Now we move on to a discussion on the life of Kabir. According to prevailing legend, Kabir was a son of a Brahmin widow who had left him by the side of a tank in Banaras. A Muslim weaver, Neeru, and his wife Neema picked up the baby and brought him up. Thus, Kabir spent his early life in the house of the Muslim parents. As they were quite poor, they could not provide him with formal education. Kabir, as he himself states, he had never been to any kind of school. But from his childhood, Kabir had a spiritual bent of mind. Then, in later years, he got initiated at Banaras by his spiritual master Ramananda and became his disciple. He followed the profession of his foster father and led a family life after he married a lady called Loi. In spite of this, the deep interest in religion and religious affairs affected many people to follow his teachings. Gradually, the number of his disciples increased. Both Hindus and Muslims became his followers, who were later known as Kabirpanthis. His oral sermons were ethnolized. The couplets and other form of poetry that was orated by him verbally was later jotted down by his followers in four parts: the Kutvani, Taksar, Mool Gyan, and Bijak Bani, into a book by his disciple named Bijak. Kabir composed simple hymns in Hindi in the honor of Almighty, and these hymns were called Doha, became extremely popular because of their lyrical beauty and simplicity of message it tried to convey. Kabir's syncretic principles in Hinduism and Islam. Kabir was one of the most famous authoritative personas of Nirguna tradition or Nirguna sect of Bhakti age. Since his early childhood, Kabir grew up in such a condition and environment, and also as legend of his birth goes, that it inculcated in him the idea to establish a feeling of brotherhood and unity among the Hindus and the Muslims. This gesture of Kabir came a long way in the growth and development of the society that he lived in. The story of his birth and the way he was brought up by his parents had a great impact on his personality and the way he thought. The love and care of his family indicated such qualities in him that inspired Kabir to establish a strong bond of brotherhood and cooperation among the Hindus and the Muslims. In spite of his upbringing in a Muslim's weaver family, Kabir was at heart a true devotee of Lord Ram. His foster father always encouraged him in his spiritual ventures. In other words, to say, his foster father was the first teacher to initiate spiritual life in Kabir. So Kabir had great respect for him. Kabir appeared to modern India to be the true devotee of nonconformity, of all that is free, noble, and challenging in the Indian tradition. The doctrines of Bhakti were preached by Ramananda, but it was popularized by Kabir and his followers. Kabir was a Vaishnavite. He was deeply influenced by the Nirguna Bhakti, and he held high faith and respect for the truth beyond worldly affairs. He described his God as Nirguna. He tried to establish the superiority of Bhakti as the path to achieve Supreme Being. According to him, the easiest way to get closely associated with God is through Bhakti. It is the highest sentiment of respect and love. Kabir's God is absolutely impersonal. No word can define him. Kabir has to leave the concept of God as it might stand by itself unexplained. He does not believe in the incarnation of God and a personal God. The God who is formless has been adored by Kabir. Yet he states that bhakti or devotion is the main way for realization of God. His treatment of bhakti stands for harmony and peaceful coexistence of the different believers. Actually, in simple words, Kabir wanted to reform the society through the religion of bhakti, which may be acceptable to all the people of different faith, and in this regard, Kabir and his concept of bhakti is very significantly different as well as relevant in our present day society. Kabir was a bold and uncompromising reformer in the religious history of medieval India. He was always against caste discrimination and other social ill practices. He tried his whole life to reconcile the religious differences among different communities, which raised its ugly head out of superstition and religious dogmatism. Kabir gave importance to bhakti because he knew that without bhakti, jnana and karma became meaningless. For Kabir, bhakti or devotion alone can lead one to realize oneself from servitude. They remind mankind that human life is fleeting and illusionary, but mankind make it real by devotion to Hari. For there is nothing real on earth and other than devotion. With the help of devotion, one can defeat selfishness and thereby realize moksha. The obligatoriness of devotion is therefore a dependable authority in favor of purpose. It is indeed an unfailing means to help men to attain real success in living a religious life. Kabir encouraged devotion to a common religion. His common religion is that where all classes of people, irrespective of caste, creed, color, can worship the Supreme Lord and get mental peace. The basic teaching of each religion is to get united with the Supreme Soul by means of serving one's fellow human being. Only a person who is true, selfless, tolerant, and sympathetic at heart can think of the welfare of other people and serve the needy in want. These are basic features of humanism. A true Bhakt sees his God in each and every particle of this universe. He feels the adored God's presence everywhere. With the passage of time, the power of bhakti within the bhakta enables him to see the world in the new light altogether. In this way, he gets united with the divine soul. Therefore, Kabir is an ideal example of cultural harmony. He was an advocate of bhakti dharma. He believed that arrogance and pride were hindrance in the path of getting united with the divine soul. Both the haves and the have-nots in the society were inspired by his teachings. No doubt the traditional society of his time created a lot of hurdles for him, but the universal humanistic appeal in Kabir's teaching removed such hurdles, and he bridged the gap between the Hindus and the Muslims. His preachings and teachings brought an air of harmony in North India when communities experienced bitterness as far as social give and take were concerned. Kabir represented Gyan Margi section of the Nirguna Bhakti. He was attracted towards the Vaishnavite religion at a time when he was a disciple of Guru Ramananda and got initiated into the marga of Vaishnava Bhakti. Kabir was such a devotee who thought of Ram as his friend and spread the message of bhakti and a secular religion in the society. In his own language, he narrates, "Mere sang dono jaha, ek Vaishnav, ek Ram." And this is how he wanted an amalgamation of Hinduisms and Islamic traditions. Now we come to a blend of both Hinduism and Islamic tradition as proposed by Kabir. The effect of monism in Islamic religion and Advaita Veda of Indian philosophy can be observed in Kabir's concept of faith and religion. People know a little about the degrading situation of socio-economic and political sphere during the time of Kabir in medieval India. The political scenario of North India was dominated by Sikandar Lodi, who was on the throne of Delhi at that time. This Muslim ruler was intolerant towards his Hindu subjects as far as religious acceptance is concerned. The Hindu religion too faced some dilemmas then. In view of such chaotic state of that time, Kabir wanted to propagate the bhakti dharma with a view to create a sound and peaceful environment in the society through religious, social, political development. He felt that Bhakti Marga is the only way of an ideal and peaceful society. Therefore, he merged the idea of Islam's monism and Hindus' Advaita Veda and created a mixed Bhakti Dharma through which the differences between Muslims and Hindus could be removed and equality between the two religions can be established. Kabir never attempted to establish his identity as follower of a certain religion, sect, or country, nor did he pledge to any school of political or ideological thought. He considered himself to be a part of both Hindu and Muslim. He did not make any distinction between Hindu and Muslim community. He only tried to establish unity among the various people of the various religions through bhakti. According to him, truth reigns supreme in living beings as they emanate from the same source of life and thought. According to Kabir, Ram Rahim ek hai, नाम धरई दुई, कहे कबीर दो नाम सुनी, ब्राह्मी परे मत कोई. कृष्ण करीम एक है, नाम धरई दुई, कहे कबीर दो नाम सुनी, ब्राह्मी परे मत कोई. Therefore, one can get the idea that the seed of integration is inherent in the character of God, and bhakti is the only way of attachment with God. Bhakti is found in the universal fellowship, where the basic principle is sharing and having mutual understanding with God. Bhakti is nothing but an investigation of truth, Param Brahma, or the absolute truth, absolute knowledge or conduct, and it is related to all religion. By practicing bhakti, people get a balanced view of life, the dignity of life, and thereby creating a new social order. Bhakti is the only thing that binds the people of human society and crossing barriers such as language, caste, religious belief, and racial diversity. It is a powerful factor in human life. Bhakti rightly values humans' tradition and culture because the teaching of bhakti contributes a great deal to man's fundamental cultural unity and appreciates our spiritual and moral values in life. Kabir represented a link in the tradition of religion and culture. He emphasized that person who can understand the importance of bhakti can understand the value of cultural and social life. Kabir successfully spearheaded a vigorous spiritual and social bhakti movement which improved the moral and spiritual life of society. In the present time, when in the society everywhere is full of violence, we recall and learn from the reformer or saints of bhakti age not only the idea of harmony and love, but also that the larger unity is possible because they gave a new discipline to the society, a faith in single divine who is Param Brahma or the absolute truth. The way of bhakti, which is propagated by the saints or reformers of that age, is secular and symbol of peace and harmony. Kabir, through his poetry, not only tried to sort out the differences between various tribes and clans in the name of power supreme by controlling the senses, but also yielded valuable teachings through his oration. As to him, human beings was the supreme. From the following discussion, we can understand that Kabir is a saint, fervent of the formless power supreme. Once we read his poetry and his skeptic about the concept of incarnation, racism based on caste, color, or creed. Thank you.